This is a checkpoint. Now here's what's interesting. We all have guns, right? I don't have a gun, but my driver has a gun, my security guy has a gun, and they're looking for guns. And so they're going to search us. So now they start to, and then when I say, look, I'm an American, they kind of go, oh, well, then just go.
Yeah. No, y'all keep going.
This is free country.
Huh? Where y'all from?
I'm from LA. I'm CBS News.
CBS?
Yeah.
Oh.
There is a school of thought that says we should have given the citizens of Baghdad 48 hours to get out of Dodge and flatten the place. Then the war would be already over, and we could have done that in 2 days.
One of the things that we don't want to do is to destroy the infrastructure of Iraq, because in a few days we're going to own that country.
Target Iraq. Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Are we going to fix that technical problem?
Tick-tock, it's time for a shock. Are you bored? It's time to get awed.
ABC,
NBC,
CBS,
CNN,
Fox News,
Breaking news.
faking news, the media war. It's time to get sore.
Wreak havoc and unleash the dogs of war. And there they start moving into Iraq.
We got rockets coming in on us. Tom, we're under attack right now.
PFC Jessica Lynch, who was being held.
The battle for Basra is still raging along this
The
road.
invasion of Iraq has invaded my brain. It's like I'm under attack. War is all I see. I dream of an endless desert.
This is the beginning of the shock and awe.
Dissolving into bombs falling, into tanks rolling, into soldiers shooting, into people dying, into reporters reporting, if that's what they're really doing.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
We have just this second crossed over the border into Iraq.
Talk about embedding. Even my bed offers no escape from the 24-hour news cycle, spin cycle, Iraqi freedom cycle. The Pentagon has invaded my living room. Their generals have taken over my TV set. Is it news or propaganda? Or in this age of media mergers, has the media merged with the military? You don't have to go into the jungle anymore to find the horror. It has come home. I feel like I'm living through my own media apocalypse, under fire on the polluted river of TV news. This is media war without end. I'm a media critic. My job, to dissect the news. There were two wars going on in Iraq. One fought with soldiers, bombs, shock and awe. The other was fought alongside it with cameras, satellites, and armies of journalists. They were fighting a media war. That was the one I covered. Throughout the war, I was self-embedded at this computer, writing about media coverage worldwide for the MediaChannel.org website. Every day I read newspapers and magazines, sifted through websites, listened to the radio, and studied the TV coverage.
Right in front of us, an amazing sight, just like out of an action movie, but this is real.
The war went on for 720 hours. I watched as much as I could stand, and was not the only critical journalist.
So was this journalism, or was this coverage? There is a grand difference between journalism and coverage. And getting access does not mean you're getting the story. It just means you're getting one more arm or leg of the story. And that's what we got.
Live coverage of a war is, I mean, to describe that as live journalism is, I think, an oxymoron. I think it's bad journalism.
I thought the entire American media, print as well as audio and video, was seduced by this run-up to the war. There was an envelopment in the American flag, a patriotic sweep.
Say what you like about Rupert Murdoch's Fox network, its strange intimacy with God and the US administration, but it takes real flair to put this on national television.
Using the facilities when there aren't any facilities. How you going to the bathroom, buddy?
So the reporter called a soldier over.
Do you want to demonstrate for us how you sit on that shovel? You want me to do it? Go ahead. There you go. There you go. Isn't that something?
In the second Back of the Book segment today, a book called The More You Watch, The Less You Know. With us is the author of The More You Know, Danny Schechter, who has had many TV news jobs, including being a producer for 2020.
Years ago, I became a network refugee, challenging the superficiality of mainstream news, especially in its treatment of war. Even when covering wars in Vietnam and Cambodia, I also critiqued the coverage. I did the same when I worked at CNN and ABC News, and then with colleagues on Global Vision's TV series about South Africa that told unreported stories. Ditto for human rights coverage of Bosnia and Saddam's terrible crimes and abuses. Warring with the reporting of war has been an obsession for years. I lambasted media failures during all the hoopla around the first Gulf War.
The majority is saying thumbs up, you know, and I like that.
So here I go again.
UPI cameraman Ed Heller, pinned down with the GIs, took these dramatic scenes while the dead and dying covered the floor, seats.
It was this history of covering wars that led me to look at the relationship between the media and the military. To understand why people rally around the flag the way they do, you have to consider the information that shapes their opinions and impressions. How wars are covered or covered up is key.
I can say without reservation that these magnificent young Americans are as fine as any fighting men our nation has ever sent into battle.
The Pentagon's efforts to control press coverage were a response to the loss of the war in Vietnam. Many of the military to this day believe that the media coverage was responsible for America's defeat, not the armed forces or the policy. In that era, reporters were far more aggressive in exposing war crimes and duplicity. Peter Arnett was one of them.
In Vietnam, the reporters did not get on the team. We challenged generals, governments, we demanded their accountability, challenged their findings. Vietnam is seen by the right wing as a war in which the American media sold out to the communist side.
Well, you should be a pain in the ass. I mean, any reporter in a time like Vietnam, you ought to be a pain in the ass because that's when it counts.
Generally, it's my belief that Richard Nixon was much more of a national security threat to the United States than any reporter I know.
After Vietnam, the Pentagon limited media access to its wars while improving outreach to journalists with training exercises like this.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm really busy. I need to attend to these people. Excuse me, please.
Remember, everything you say is on the record. Camera's off, doesn't matter. It's on the record. You say it, it can be used.
Man, basically all the soldiers here are heroes in one way or another.
Wars may destroy people and countries, but they can be profitable to cover. CNN won the 1991 Gulf War in the sense that its coverage propelled a struggling cable news operation known in the industry as the Chicken Noodle Network into a top global news brand. Revenues followed as ratings soared.
Against Iraqi forces in Kuwait. Iraq claims the attack is failing.
And so did patriotic fervor. Even as media objectivity eroded, that old truism, truth is the first casualty in war, was never more true.
Against Iraqi forces in Kuwait.
Journalists were denied access to most of the 1991 Gulf War, writes CNN's Christiane Amanpour.
Some of the killing fields.
Behind our backs, behind the backs of the field reporters, field producers, and crews on the ground, our bosses made a deal with the establishment to create pools, what I call ball and chain, handcuffed, managed news reporting. The result, we later learned the smart bombs used then were not so smart. Only 1 out of 5 hit targets. Most U.S. casualties were caused by friendly fire.
I've covered enough wars to be able to, in a position to say this, that we have never, including me, have never shown the viewer what it's really like, and how horrible war is. And partly you can't show it because the camera can't capture it, but even at a certain level the camera may capture it and we won't show it. There are certain kinds of close-ups that we won't show. There are certain blood spatters, dead children that we don't show people, partly because it violates sort of long-standing practice. Don't put gore on television.
The coverage of the Gulf Wars lacked more than gore. Context and background were missing, like the role the U.S. played in putting Saddam Hussein in power and arming him for years. America's war on Iraq did not end with the end of that war. Washington initiated and the UN imposed sanctions, which, coupled with the cruelty of Saddam's regime, reportedly led to 1 million children dying and the spread of new diseases. A mysterious Gulf War syndrome struck veterans. The U.S. and Britain imposed no-fly zones, using them as a cover for warlike bombing raids years before the 2003 invasion. None of these stories received the full coverage they deserved. And then came 9/11. The Bush administration used the attack as a pretext to put in place secret plans to invade Iraq drawn up before 9/11. The media was mobilized behind the war on terror. In post-9/11 America, a patriotic correctness swept through the news business. TV anchors put flags in their lapels. I wrote a book showing how the coverage advanced the government's plan to respond militarily. Some stories explaining why they hate us gave way to this.
It all became very personal at 9/11. I was in command of my battalion at the time. I mean, I was in the training meeting when that happened. The unspeakable acts against pillars of our strength being, hit by aircraft. You can imagine what it was like. It all became, very, very personal.
Much of the coverage fueled demands for retaliation. There was often more debate in the streets than on TV.
The same hatred that killed so many people.
Many networks said they didn't want to get ahead of public opinion or be baited as soft on terrorism.
They don't love me, and I don't love them, okay? Okay?
This confrontation at Ground Zero in New York shows what happened when a peace activist called for global understanding.
What about us? Do you care about every human being here?
It's September 11th. You're at Ground Zero.
If they do something to us, that we're not going to do nothing back, but we're not going to do nothing back.
They didn't do anything. Iraq did not do shit to America. So you're saying it's okay to kill innocent people?
Listen, if it's for a better good, let's do it. Yeah, I volunteered. You know why?
To keep your ass free. To keep your hippie ass free. He puts his life on the line.
Don't forget, the American media is based in New York City. Every reporter in New York City saw the World Trade Towers collapse. They took it personally. There was a sense of revenge, of fear, and that was reflected in the coverage of the Afghanistan war and the war on terrorism.
We may be wrong about some of the things we're passing along.
CBS's Dan Rather, September 22nd, 2001. I am willing to give the president and the military the benefit of any doubt.
As we moved into Iraq, a more preemptive strike, the media maintained this sort of romance, you might say, with government.
But the fact that they allowed the Bush administration to manipulate the truth so grossly and so nakedly in the run-up to the war made the war possible.
The United States of America will not permit the world's most dangerous regimes to threaten us with the world's most destructive weapons.
All the while, Washington insisted Iraq had to be disarmed, that it had proof that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction that threatened the world.
Saddam Hussein recently sought significant
The demonization of Saddam Hussein went on for 5 months. During the run-up to the Iraq War, American media outlets, including most TV networks and the New York Times, relayed the administration's spin on the threat posed by Iraq without much question. Without their cheerleading, there could have been no consensus for war. In May 2004, the New York